Hello friends and greetings for the day. Welcome back to another tutorial on ISTQB Foundation level sample paper discussions. Here we are learning about the tips and tricks and time management related skills of this particular certification exam. As a part of this particular tutorial, we are stepping into the chapter 4 of set B and trying to understand what kind of other test technique questions can be asked to you right from the chapter 4. To get started, the very first question from here is question number 19, and it says, which of the following statement best describes the difference between the decision table testing and the branch testing? One of my favorite and most interesting question, which I always highlight in all my sessions, that decision table testing looks quite similar to that of decision testing. In fact, the branch testing has a synonym, and if they wanted to complicate it further, they could have even used the word decision testing. And decision table testing and decision testing are from two different categories. The decision table testing is a black box test technique. Decision testing, aka branch testing, is white box test techniques. And certainly the bases are also different. For decision table, you need the requirements to be there. For the decision testing or branch testing, you need the code to be there. And the table certainly works on the Boolean. Here it works more on the concept of the decisions made at the conditions within a particular code. So it certainly have so many variations and differences that it can quickly help you to consider what exactly should be the right answer. But however, the options can be very tricky and we will have to be extra cautious while reading them. So let's start with this confusion. And the very first option we have is option A. Option A says in decision table testing, the test cases are derived from decision statement. And I think that's where it goes wrong, because they say statements in the code, and that's not what is decision table. However, in branch testing, the test cases are derived from knowledge of the control flow of the test object. In this context, the decision table and decision testing, which is branch testing, both are same. Okay, so that's not something which is making the right statement. However, the part one is wrong. Decision table is not derived from the decisions of the statement in a particular code, right? So let's go to option B. Option B says in decision table testing, the test cases are derived from the specification that describes the business logic. That makes sense. Whereas in branch testing, the test cases are based on anticipation of potential defects in the source code. Now, anticipation of potential defects is more of like experience-based testing, because in experience-based testing, we told you that knowledge of typical defects, error guessing are some of these keywords which tells us that we depend on the anticipation and intuitions, and at the same time, the knowledge of typical defects, what you get in such product, is very important. So it's not white box testing again. Whereas branch testing is a technique under white box, not experience based. So let's look at option C. Option C says in decision table testing, the test cases are derived from the knowledge of the control flow. Again, making it wrong, because control flow is more about the white box part. And the second part says in branch testing, the test cases are derived from the specification. That's vice versa and describes the business logic. Not at all. The branch testing is white box, dependent on the code and the control flow, but decision table testing is on the business logic, right? So that's pretty much goes with the wrong opinion again. But we have option D. Option D says in decision table testing, the test cases are independent of how the software is implemented. And in branch testing, the test cases can be created only after the design or implementation of the code. However, this is not a very straightforward option. Like they just used the word implementation in both the statement, but they also made it clear that decision table testing is independent of the implemented code, which makes it pretty clear that this is not dependent on the code. And yes, it is not. So that's how you basically have to be patient enough to read every single word in the option. Or if you just do some misplacement while reading these options, that is where you would go wrong very easily, right? So concluding this with all the justification we just discussed, the right answer for this particular question is D, that is in decision table testing, the test cases are independent of how the software is implemented. And in branch testing, the test cases can be created only after the design or implementation of the code, which makes it pretty straightforward that some of the theoretical questions can also be asked from the techniques chapter, not only the evaluation based, but they will be more dangerous than that of the practical, that is K3 level apply based questions. So be extra cautious to deal with them at the right time. Let's move on to the next question. The next question we have is question number 20, and it is talking about the equivalence partition coverage. And this is one of its kind, a little interesting type of question. So please pay attention to this because the explanation would matter a lot, right? So the question says customers of test wash, that is a car wash chain, have cards with a record of number of washes they have bought so far. The initial value is 0. After entering the car wash, the system increases the number on the card by 1. That means every single wash will give a count of 1 on your card. This value represents the number of current washes. That's totally correct. Based on this number of system decides what discount the customer is entitled to. And the condition has been very well described to you that every 10th wash, again, the word 10th does not mean 10, okay? That means not only on the 10 wash, 10th, every single 10th, that is an interval of 10, like 10, 20, 30, the system gives 10% discount. So every 10th wash, you will get 10% off. And for every 20th wash, that means an interval of 20, 40, 60, like that, the system gives you further 40% discount, which means 10th you have 10% off already, but on 20th you will get 10 plus 40, a total of 50% off, right? So which of the following set of input data understood as the number of the current washes achieves the highest equivalence partition coverage? Now this partition is a little tricky because every 10th wash you are getting, and you cannot just say a range like 0 to 5, 6 to 10, 10 to 20. Now that's not something what you're going to create here. Rather, you're going to put similar behaving elements into one partition that is following the basic rule and definition of equivalence partition. If you remember, the definition of EP says that we put similar behaving elements into one particular class. They can be in the sequence like 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and so on, or they can be random as well. For example, a payment shall be possible only using Visa and Master on a particular website. That does not mean there's a sequence, right? So Visa and Master falls into the valid class, whereas other cards falls into the invalid class. Then there are other payment options like cash, net banking. They would also fall into the different classes because they're not card. So exactly the same. The behavior and similar behaving elements put the elements into one class. So the partition would be created something like this. Okay, that is the first partition will have numbers between 1 to 9. Okay, it can be 0 as well. Just because you got the first membership card and there's no washes taken yet. So I should say it as 0 to 9. Then 10 is skipping here because 10 has a different behavior. You will have 10% off there. So 11 to 19 has the same behavior, that is no discount. And so on, like 21 to 29, 31 to 39 will have the similar behavior and put into the first range with no discount. Whereas if you see the other partition, it is the interval of 10. Like every 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, etc., you would get 10% discount. Whereas if you take the third partition, the behavior is different. That means every 20th wash, that is 20, 40, 60, 80, 100, 120, you will have 50% off as per the scenario. And that makes my job very much simpler to understand that what are the partitions. Now I can go ahead and put the options into this table to conclude with the right answer. So let's go ahead. The very first option says 19, 20, and 30. And if you see here, 19 is in the first range, 20 is in the second range, and 30, 20 is in the second range, and 30 is also in the second range. But if you see it otherwise, 20 is also in the third range. That means I would prefer to take 20 in the third range rather than second range, and then try to cover all three partitions if I do not find any better option than this. Okay. B, 11 is in the first range, 12 is also in the first range, and 20 is the second range. But the question is, which achieves the highest equivalence partition coverage? So this option B covers only 2 of them. And C, if you talk about 1 goes into the first partition, 10 goes into the second partition, and 50 goes into the second partition as well because it's an interval of 10. Okay, so just covers 2 partition again. And D says 10, which is the second partition, 29 covers the first partition, 30 covers the second partition, and 31 again back to first partition. So just two partitions are again covered. Don't go influenced by the number of values here. Okay, the 4 values are there, but just covers 2 of them. So I think if I have to now conclude, I have a better opinion on the option A, that is 20 can be taken from the third partition rather, and 30 can be taken from the same. Because don't forget the second important rule of EP, that we take one value from each partition. Okay, one value from each partition. So you have taken already 20 for the 10% discount, then let's take the other one for the same. So 30 would be taken for 10% and 20 will be taken for 50%. So that's how it makes it clear. So in that way, if you need a little more explanation, just rewind the video, watch it again, you would get the complete clarity, right? So that's all from this particular question. I think we can just go ahead and conclude quickly. The right answer for this particular question is A, that is 90, 20, and 30 are the set of values which will have the highest equivalence partition coverage, being 19 from the first range, 20 from the third range, and 30 from the second range. Okay, so let's go with the next question here. The next question we have is question number 21, and this is being picked up from the boundary value analysis. Again, one of its kind, a little tricky one, so have patience. It says you are testing a form that verifies the correctness of the length of the password given as input. Okay, the form accepts a password with the correct length and rejects a password that is too short or too long. Okay, that's pretty much simple, that you sometime, day-to-day basis as well, you understand that minimum character length is 8 most of the time, and they have some combinations also. Anything less than that is not accepted. There's a maximum limit as well, and nothing more than that could be accepted. So they've defined clearly that too short and too long are not accepted, but there is a correct length. The password length is correct if it is between 6 and 12 characters, inclusive of both the values. That means anything between 6 to 12 would be accepted as values, valid values. Otherwise, it is considered incorrect. Now, at first, the form is empty. Now, this is the most important part of this question, because 0 is also being created as a boundary here. The reason is I need to check that when the form is loaded by default, it should have no value in it, right? And that becomes a measurable criteria. Whereas in other cases, for example, if you see from my tutorials or some other previous questions from the set A, we literally told you that on the left hand side, as far as things are invalid, you don't have to consider anything, because anything below that is invalid for us. But right now, by saying this, that we want to check that the password field is empty on the load, that is when you first load the page, then it creates another wall, another boundary there, and 0 becomes one of my end value as a part of the boundary value to be measured. They say you apply boundary value analysis to the password length variable. Your set of test cases achieves 100% two-value boundary value coverage. The team decided that due to the high risk of this component, test cases should be added to ensure 100% three-value boundary value coverage. Okay, fine. So you initially applied 2-point analysis and you have tested it, but the team decided that just because the risk is associated, we would like to go with 3-point. So you want to add more test cases. And exactly that is what the question is, which additional password lengths should be tested to achieve this. So first of all, when it comes to 2-point analysis, you know that you take one inside, one outside on each boundary. So if I look at the table, this is how the table will look like. And there will be a wall on the left because that's the least possible, and negative is not a value, so that I don't have to consider anything beyond that. Please mind, the scenario will tell you very clearly what values to consider and what not to consider, and this is one of its kind, which is a little tricky. And here the left side of 0 should not be taken into account. Okay, so if you see 0 to 5 is my range, then 6 to 12 is my valid range, and 13 and greater is again my invalid range. However, 0 should be a measure when it comes to default page loading. So I have created a partition there as well. Now, as per 2-point analysis, I would have -1 and 0, but again, -1 is not a valid criteria. So I would say 0 there. And then I would say 5, 6, 12, 13 as per 2-point analysis. So I've got these values already. Okay, that is 0, 5, 6, 12, 13, which are written on the table, are my 2-point analysis value. But they are asking, we want to make 3-point analysis. So what additional values do you need? So if I do it for 3-point analysis, every single partition, both the sides, you will have 2 values now, because we take 2 from each side of the boundary. However, left side of the 0 is not being considered, so you can ignore that. But on the right hand side, for that particular partition, you need to take 2 values, right? So our values will be, as per 3-point, 0, 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11, 12, and 13. Just because 13 is the invalid input, okay, invalid partition, we don't really need the 4th value, that is 14. We need the 14 there as well, because that's the outside. But that's a little tricky part, because as per the basis, we don't say that 14 is a boundary value in the invalid extra. We take LB, LB minus 1, LB plus 1, where LB is also input in that particular range. So you can go back to tutorials and quickly check that if you have any confusion. But in this case, it should be up to 13. But for some scenario, the option has been given with 14 as well. So 0, 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11, 12, 13 is the only values which you will pick up for the 3-point analysis. Okay, and in that context, if you see the options here, which covers the maximum or which covers the remaining values. So 1, 4, 7, 11, 14. Okay, 14 is the little tricky part, as I told you, because 0, 5, 6, 12, and 13 are already covered by the 2-point analysis. So they are already included and we don't need that into our discussion, right? So the remaining values are 1, 4, 7, 11, and 14. I don't believe that should be the right answer, but trust me, that should not be the right answer, but it's just that the syllabus has this written and they basically find that as one of the value. But as far as it is outside, invalid, we just take 1 value in the invalid range beyond the boundary. Okay, so 14 should not be the inclusive of the answer. Anyways, in that context, put together, the right answer to this particular question is D, that is 1, 4, 7, 11 are the remaining tests which we need to add on top of 2-point analysis to make it 3-point analysis. Okay, and 14th is not the answer. Okay, 14th should not be included. It's just that I believe this is a typo, right? So put together, I think you got some good flavor of test techniques here. And just because we had better explanations involved and some questions really need a lot of effort to get to the conclusion and better understanding. So this video went a little longer, but trust me, I'm sure you would have some good takeaways from this session at the end of it, right? So that's all from this particular tutorial team. Should you have anything else, feel free to comment below. I'm always there to address your queries and answer them well. Till then, keep learning, keep exploring, keep understanding the context. Thanks for watching the video, team, and happy learning.